Recording. All right, Ryan from the top. Let's start over.
From the top. Today we're talking about how to choose a man. And if you're watching the chat, it looks like there's a lot of examples of people to stay away from. But this is the first part in our series today. And so for all the women watching, this is how to choose a man, how to evaluate them, some signs of bad to stay away from, some signs of good to give you a better feeling about that person, and how to actually tell whether they're a good man or not. And for all the men who are here, this is an understanding between uh, of us men of how you can come off as a better person or what you need to work on. And if there's something that you were unaware of, perhaps you had good intention, but it's coming across like what we're doing in the slideshow or what we're talking about in the slideshow, then it is a good tip to kind of work on it yourself. And it's a very quick way to improve your situation, even within the span of a week. So, with that being said, Terrence and I are going to tell you a little bit more about ourselves. Next slide, Terrence. So, for anyone who didn't hear the first time, my name is Ryan and I am a relationship engineer. So, with a background mostly in systems and electrical engineering, a lot of what I focused on is understanding how to build systems from the ground up, how to analyze them, how to tell when something's going to go wrong, and when something does go wrong, not only how to fix it, but make sure it doesn't happen again. And currently, I work in the business development world as well, helping companies understand what type of relationships do we even want to get into with other companies? How do we evaluate them? How do we make sure we're not hurt? How do we establish a long-term relationship that's going to help both of us? And it's something that I've wanted to do for a very long time. So, which is why Terrence and I partner together, is focusing on those concepts and those abilities from a technical perspective of, well, how do we do that with our romantic relationships, with our family relationships, with our friends? How do we build it from the ground up and follow a repeatable process, not just a personal anecdote, in order how to change our lives for the better, how to find the person we're going to get married to, and how to make sure to the best of our ability that this is something healthy for us. This is something that Terrence and I help many clients with and have been doing for the last couple of years. Terrence slightly longer than me. And I love partnering with him with his unique background that quite complements mine. So, Terrence, what is your background and how does it fit into this, man?
Yep, I'm a criminologist. I'm also a criminal profiler. Um, I've been doing that for a long time, over a decade. I did a lot of criminal profiling in the Detroit metro area as well as Chicago, especially with gang crimes. So much of what so much of what we need to do in life is to technically watch people. And one of the biggest problems that happens is that we invite people into our lives without truly knowing them. And after speaking to at this point thousands of criminals and at this point thousands of victims, what I wanted to do with Ryan was partner together and show some of those signs of high quality people, as well as signs of problematic people that we probably shouldn't let in our lives. Okay. And now we're going to start. So, one of the most important processes is character. So, when you're out there and we're thinking of dating people, when we're thinking of getting to know people, I don't care what they do for a living, I don't care what their job title is. We have to figure out what is their character. How do they really respond? Are they truly helpful to other individuals? Are they kind? You know, is what you're seeing from this individual who they really are? And we're going to go through tips right now in the beginning of the slideshow to start talking about character. And what we're really doing is a lot of men intrinsically size up other men, but we don't really talk about that process. If you ask your average guy, he knows within like 15 to 30 minutes whether he's interested in, and getting to know somebody, maybe a friendship or a business. But what does that process really look like? Okay. So now we're going to go to quickly how men read men. And one of the reasons I really like this photo is men often approach other men cautiously, as in, I'm not going to go by what this person says. I'm going to go by how this person acts, what this person is really about. And as we get to understand more of what this person about, then I'm going to know in which situations or not situations should I have this person in my life. But I'm going to let that person tell me who they are. I'm not going to assume I know who this person is. So it starts with this concept in the guy's mind. Should I know you? For first thing we start with is posture and presence. The first impression is shaped by noticing posture, confidence, and authentic body language. So what I'm really trying to figure out is the person in front of me, is this person authentic? Is this an actual individual in front of me, or is this person putting on a mask? Am I looking at a chameleon? Next is assessment of intent. Men quickly sense if motives are genuine or manipulative during interactions. So something as simple as this, if somebody's raising their hand right now, and we haven't even finished the presentation, I'm going to automatically think this is somebody being manipulative. This is somebody playing games. This is somebody engaging in behavior that they would never do in person. But the problem with the internet is the internet empowers cowards. It empowers people to do things they would never do to somebody's face. Just like me going to criminal profiling, people talked all that junk until it was time to go to prison for 25 to 30 years. Then that's when people start crying to see their mom. That's when they want to cut deals. That's when the realities of people's circumstances hit home. Until then, it's just a game. Going back to the slideshow, we're judging competence and value. They observe leadership skills and they respect men that give righteously above hidden self-promotion. And that's the key, is that when men are dealing with other men, we're trying to figure out first, does this person have any value? Why should I know this person? If this person is in my life, is he going to make my life better? And likewise, if he's in my life, I need to also be making his life better as well. So that's that real rapport of friendship. And what's often, and it shows up a lot in networking events, is self-promotion. Somebody's looking for one-way attention. They're looking for one-way benefit. They want to find a group to network with, but they have nothing of value to give to the group. And that's always a problem. So this is what I would call the progression of rapport. And it starts basic and it goes more specific into knowing what someone's actually about. So I like to start it off with something that has nothing to do with the person in front of me, but it starts letting me know about the person. So if I ask, which movie character let you down the most and what made it so frustrating? Now I'm starting to learn a little bit more about that person's value system. First, I can figure out what kind of movies does this person watch. Second, what kind of character from another individual do you find disappointing? Do you find aggravating? Do you find problematic? Another question I would ask is, what does success look like to you? This is also a value-based question. There's no right or wrong, but now we can start seeing if there's an alignment between me and this other person. Next, what's one decision that really shaped who you are today? And that's really important as well because it's like, what are some of the decisions you've made in your life, and why did you make those decisions? Next, what do you think being a supportive friend actually looks like? So now I can start building a framework of this person and what kind of friendships, what kind of relationships, what kind of things does this person truly believe in? What does this person really want from another human being? And next, have you ever had to walk away from someone to grow to be the person you were meant to be? Now that's extremely important because now we're getting into like life. Like what did this person have to in order to be successful, there's certain people we just have to remove from our life. And now we start talking to this person and getting into like those really tough conversations. So to be successful, I know I had to remove some people from my life. Some of them were family members. Some of these people I knew for 10, 15 years, but they were going to take me in the wrong path. Ryan, you had to do the same. I bet you almost everybody on this call had to remove people from their life. Now that
Hmm.
creates a value conversation that's deeper than just what sports team do you watch and all that. So again, male conversations, especially by themselves, are usually a feast of knowledge. We might get something to eat, we might go to an event, we might do all these things. However, the currency is knowledge. I'm helping this person learn, this person's helping me learn. And together we build together, and everybody wins at the end of the day. So now we're going to get into the danger zone. So these are like dangerous behaviors to watch out for. If you see one that's isolated, okay, that's fine. You know, nobody's perfect. But what we're looking on is, again, building somebody's profile. Like, what is the profile that the person has? And we're going to start with the techniques of neutralization. If you've seen some of our previous our groups, you know, we talk a lot about criminal profiling skills, criminal profiling techniques. One of them is the techniques of neutralization. And these are the techniques people use to separate themselves from their past behaviors. And there are often ways people separate themselves from the behaviors they intend to engage in the future. One is denial of responsibilities. It wasn't me. It wasn't my fault. All the time, especially when I was dealing with youth that were facing a lot of time in prison, it wasn't my fault. It was my friend's fault. It was somebody else's fault. It wasn't my gun. That type of behavior. So they're separating themselves from the consequences and the actions that they've begun and that they willingly engaged in. Next is denial of injury. It didn't hurt. They have insurance. I came across a lot of this with people that were involved in scams. They said, you know, it's not my fault. You know, that person, it's a credit card. I didn't hurt anybody. They'll be refunded. Again, they're separating themselves from the action. Next is denial of victim. They deserved it. What did you expect? So if I can deny the victim, then I can say I'm not culpable. I didn't do anything wrong. Next is the condemnation of condemners. You're just as bad. You're only blaming me because. Now, if you look at all these are statements that you could see coming from a child. But as we get older, these statements just they come out differently, but they mean the same thing. It's the same techniques. The last one is appeal to a higher authority. I had to help my friends. I did it for my country, my race. Did it for my religion. Um, you know, you can't judge me. Only God can judge me. These are all ways that people separate themselves from their actions. And when you're, especially if you're doing an interrogation, you might see all five of them within 10 minutes. And so I just get used to seeing the same things over and over again. Next slide. This is one of the ways when you're talking to somebody or you're in a group, this is one of the ways to get people to really disclose who they are, is you have to resist the urge to set the record straight. So a lot of times when somebody is talking to us, if we disagree with what they're saying or they've said something that we find distasteful, we let out cues that we're unhappy with what they said or that we disagree. And because of that, the person knows to mask themselves. So they start hiding bits and pieces of what they actually think. Where if you just let someone talk, they will often just reveal who they are. So it goes back to that Napoleon quote, never interrupt your enemy when he's making a mistake. If you've followed us for a while, you know that I use a lot of movies. So if you go back to the original Matrix movie, the mole, the shady person, the one who betrayed the group, Cypher, many times before his ultimate betrayal, he talked about how disgruntled he was about the situation. But what happened is people cut him off. So he wasn't, when he started talking, they didn't see the depth of how angry he was with the situation. And because they didn't see the depth, a lot of, I would argue that they couldn't tell that he was already switching sides. And even in this scene right here, if you remember the original Matrix, Neo is getting out the car. Cypher is looking at him with this weird sort of smile on his face. And that's one of the things that's also very important when you're dealing with manipulators or problematic people. People can lie with their words, but it's really hard to lie with your body language. Even a seasoned psychopath usually has a hard time lying with his or her body language. So when somebody's body language doesn't match their words or doesn't match the situation, believe that 85% of the truth is their body language and go with that. So this is really important. A lot of men know who these people are. I don't think a lot of women do. But what I posted is probably the six most viewed male thought leaders. So every single one of these individuals on here is a New York Times best-selling author and has at least 2 million subscribers on YouTube. So if you're talking, so the first guy, Alex Hermazi, if you're looking at business development, he has the number one book. The next guy, David Goggins, he's the one in the middle that looks like he's running a race. He has the number one book on personal development. The next guy is Style. We're going to talk about all this later on. And this is important because men often act like a wolf pack. So they follow the lead of the men that they respect and the men that they look forward to. So likewise, you have people that are following this and saying, okay, everybody that's really running this conversation on what we should be doing as men going forward, every one of them essentially went into entrepreneurship. Almost essentially every one of them is married. Every one of them is talking about personal responsibility and discipline. On the flip side, people that go through problematic channels, they have their own quote unquote people that they follow as well. So, like the people that troll, if I looked at their YouTube algorithm, they're probably very similar because they're headed down a different path. And what's extremely important is if somebody says that they are getting their information from a source, it's important to figure out what that source is and what that source actually talks about, because you'll probably learn a lot more about that person. Okay, next slide. And now I'm switching over to Ryan.
Thank you, Terrence.
Okay.
So, when we're talking about a man in front of us, one of the most important things we need to understand is how does he listen? Because a lot of the time, when we have a man in front of us, might be a stranger, might be somebody we know, but how a man listens basically tells you what he pays attention to in the world. And at to what point does he pay attention to it? And when we're talking about conversation, trying to get to know somebody, it can fall into basically two categories. Do they listen with an intent to respond to you, like react to what you're saying, or an intent to gather information and understand what you're saying and understanding what's happening around them? So, an intent to respond may mean only listening enough to remembering just a few things so that they can give you their opinion on it. But it's not really that helpful. It could mean barely paying attention. They might not even be giving you eye contact. They might not, their body language might show that they're distracted with something else. It may mean that they can barely remember what you said 2 minutes ago and they have no idea where the flow of the conversation is going. And it also means that they're not paying attention to the people around them and they don't even know how to analyze what's going on. So, can they evaluate whether, are they listening to a conversation long enough to understand whether somebody is even making sense? Or are they just kind of going with the flow? And when they're listening, right, is their intent to respond, meaning they only want to gather enough information to discredit somebody else so that they can seem like they're right? Do they want to listen only long enough to bully the people around them or seem like the most important person in the room, even if it's not helpful and doesn't matter. A lot of the times I'll call this reactionary. If this person is listening with only the intent to respond, they're a pretty reactionary person. And that causes a lot of problems later on. But if they're listening with the intent to understand, it means they're paying attention to you enough to remember what you're actually saying and think about what your point even is if you're having a discussion. Paying clear attention to what's being said. They can repeat to you, right? What you've been talking about for the last 5, 10, 30 minutes. They're paying attention enough to constantly evaluate what is being said and done around them. Um, this means they're aware, they're in the moment, they're present. And when they're listening, the information that they're paying attention to, are they able to discern between what is helpful and what isn't? And do they keep that in mind for when they're going to respond to you, whether they're focusing on the information that is helpful or that even matters to the conversation? Next slide, Terrence. So if you notice how somebody is listening, the next part is looking at how they respond. So when they're responding to somebody, when they're having a conversation, when they are taking the stage and speaking, or even when they're not speaking, it's their body language. Is their response under the category of they need to be seen as right? They need to be seen as correct. They need to be seen as the most important, most charismatic, most interesting person in the world. Or do they need to be helpful? So just because we're having a discussion or we're arguing about something, we're trying to get to the truth of something. Of course, we want our position to be right, but the difference between being right and needing to be seen as right is so important because if at any point I'm having a discussion with Terrence and I find out, wow, I really didn't know something, or I am factually wrong. The focus is not on convincing Terrence no matter what and making everyone else understand that I'm right, even if it's not. It goes, oh, well, I needed to get to the truth. I need to be helpful. This conversation needs to go somewhere. And what needing to be seen as right looks like is trying to argue with people rather than help them or be helpful or accept any constructive criticism or admit that you're wrong. That shows up as they don't care for the truth, only their own opinion. So when you're speaking facts, they respond with opinion. They respond with something that you may not be able to even discuss or argue about because they deflect everything from facts to their opinion is the most important. And do they give their opinion when it doesn't matter? So a lot of this time, this is attention-seeking behavior. I could have an opinion about something I think that is like nuanced and wonderful and makes me interesting. But if it doesn't matter to the conversation we're having, then it doesn't matter. So do they react to what people say? Do they speak without thinking about it immediately and have to interrupt people? Or can they be a little bit patient and think before they speak? Um, and a lot of the time, this looks as waiting to attack people at a personal level in order to be seen as right. This goes into a ton of argument and logical fallacies, which I'm not going to get into, but it's very obvious that when we're in the middle of it, even if we can't label it, we know what's going on. We can feel it. This person is a problem. But needing to be helpful means that they respond with the intent to be helpful. And if we're not sure that it's helpful or it's not going to be helpful, we don't respond at all. There's a lot of times that I may have an opinion or think about something that's being said, but if it's not helpful, I'm not going to contribute that to the conversation unless it's on the path of seeking clarity, purpose, understanding, and gaining a greater amount of helpful knowledge. So they care for the truth and understanding, even if they may be wrong and they admit it. And they give their opinion when it matters. And now, this is a very important part. Just because somebody asks for my opinion or someone's opinion on something doesn't mean that that opinion is helpful or matters. So does this person discern on when something is going to be helpful and when to say it or not? And they think about the responses beforehand. So if we watch the way somebody is listening to us and the people around them, and the way that they respond to everyone, we get a glimpse into what is important to them because what they're going to respond to tells you what they value and it tells you their character of how they're going to treat you as well. This could be in a wonderful discussion about the vacation you want to have in a few years, or your dreams, or your hopes, or it could be a discussion about whether you should be get married at all, or a discussion on politics. It could be anything far and in between. Next slide, Terrence. I don't know if anyone saw the movie Yes Man with Jim Carrey. It was kind of a comedy, but it did talk about something really important. Now, in the movie, everything does work out for him. He's told your life will change if you just say yes to everything. And he does it, and he has a very fantastical adventure. But something you notice is, especially with a lot of movies, they paint a picture that's not realistic. And most often, when we say yes to everything, what we end up is saying yes to things that don't concern us and won't get us anywhere. So if I have a plan for my life, if I want to get married in 2 years, if I want to have a certain number of kids, if I want to have a certain type of income to afford everything that I want to do, if I want to start a company, if I want to be an author, all my hopes and dreams, those require plans and then executing on those plans. And the more we say yes to everything around us, any opportunity that comes, whether it's good for us or bad for us, there's no possibility of us actually being successful. So what that looks like in a man is that they're a people pleaser, that they don't have a certain set of values. And what's most important to them is that everyone likes them. Not that they have a sense of individuality for a purpose. And that also means they give into peer pressure. They don't have a spine. They don't have the ability to say no. So they're defined the way that everyone else around them is defining them. They take opportunities even if they don't matter, even if they're bad opportunities, because they think, why not? Let's just go with the flow. And whenever we hear somebody that says, oh, let's just go with the flow, I want to make something clear. Going with the flow in this case is not, hey, I don't need to control everything. And if something comes up, and it makes me a little bit uncomfortable, it's okay. We can continue forward and find a different way forward. I'm not talking about that. What we're talking about here is someone who goes with the flow means they are not willing to take charge. They have no plans for their life and they are completely passive. They do not seek anything out. And that's a problem because when we're on our path and purpose, it requires the people that we engage with, that we allow in our lives, that we're going to spend our lives with, to be on that same path and purpose. And a path and purpose means that we have a planned out trajectory and we have things we need to do on a daily basis to get there. And going with the flow doesn't jive with that at all. They're mutually exclusive. So they indiscriminately follow the people that they like without any reason other than they like them. Or they say, why not? Now, the opposite of that is a rejecter, meaning somebody who understands that they're going to have to put up boundaries and they have to say no to things and people that don't concern him. It means that if anybody who comes to him with a business opportunity or a dream or an idea, selling hope and fantastical ideas, or even not, and it's just a horrible idea, that he has the ability to say no, I don't want anything about it. And no matter the pressure that people try and put on him, he's going to say no because it doesn't concern me. I don't know enough. I don't want to do it. I'm not interested in it, or flat out, it's a bad idea. It's a bad thing. I don't want to get involved in crypto because, it does not actually give somebody a stable financial future and is more like gambling than anything else. And it's so easy to be taken advantage of. So no matter the number of people that come to that man and tell him, well, you should get involved in crypto and invest here, he's going to say no. Just an example. Saying no to problematic people and opportunities. It goes under what I've said earlier. This, whether it's a business opportunity, whether it's a hobby, whether it's a vacation spot, whether it's a business idea, they say no. This can also look like somebody who's not chasing money. They're chasing a purpose in a career. So they may not take a higher paying job, which my friend recently did not take a higher paying job because he realized that just because it paid more didn't mean that he would be as useful, as efficient, or even keep up or learn the skills he needed to become a better man. So he took a lower paying job that paid him tens of thousands of dollars less, so that in the long run, he could become more valuable to the people and companies around him and give so much more back, as well as being more influential. So being a rejecter also includes rejecting things that are just unrighteous and not helpful. This means leaving people or areas or situations that focus only on gossip, meaning we're only talking about things that don't matter and the bad things that people have done. It includes leaving places where there's a lot of lying, cheating, and debauchery, and any sort of unethical behavior. Anything that does not jive with his religious or moral or business code, however you want to label it, his personal code, anything that does not jive with it, he understands it doesn't concern him. He says no, and he does not get involved. And a man who is on his path and purpose, a good man, is going to have a basic set of standards that he lives by that go into his moral code. And so he's going to, as long as those things are realistic, his realistic standards, he's not going to accept things that are below those standards. Next slide. So if we understand how a man listens, and he listens well, and he responds well, and he does not concern himself with problematic things, meaning he doesn't continue to bring problems into his life, and by proxy, if you get engaged with him, bring unnecessary problems into your life, we now need to understand, is he a guy who commits or does he quits? Does he commit to things? Does he, on a consistent basis, show that he is loyal to whatever cause he says he is? Or does he show signs of it doesn't matter and the first problem, the first obstacle, his one foot that's constantly out the door, he uses it to exit? So what I call this is the realm of excuses, deflection, and failure versus preparation, effort, and perseverance. So somebody who quits, it when they say they are going to do something, they came up with the idea on the spot, or they've had it in their mind, but they're saying it to impress somebody. Because the whole point of saying it was to impress them, but if they really meant it, they would have been doing it already. So they don't start what they say they will start. They make excuses on why they haven't started it immediately, and all the excuses are focused on himself, meaning there's a lack of accountability. And the things that they say they will start, they leave unfinished most of the time. They deflect the responsibility of it getting done to everything else. So, what this looks like is if I was supposed to take my car to the shop in the next 2 weeks, and my wife comes back 2 weeks from now and asks me, well, why hasn't it been done? And, it looks like instead of saying, I really didn't prioritize and I failed at making sure that I put it in my schedule and whatever. It sounds like, oh, well, I had a meeting at work and then I was too tired. And then I really needed to do something else first, even though it doesn't make sense. Oh, and then I wanted to go to my favorite restaurant because I had a hard week. And at the end of the day, the things that need to get done aren't getting done because the excuses are, it's not my fault, it's everything else. So instead, a man who commits in that scenario goes, okay, So my car broke down. How much is it going to cost? Can I afford it? When do I need to have it by? And then as soon as possible, what is the soonest time I can get it done? And I'm going to attempt to do it as soon as possible. Instead of putting it off and procrastinating and coming up with reasons as to why it's not their fault. So the realm of preparation, effort, and perseverance means that they are actively doing what they need to do in order to succeed in their goal or dream, more so than ever talking about it. And they plan it out. They can tell you what they've been doing, why they've been doing it. They have a history of doing so. And if they bother to tell you about what they plan in the future, it lines up and makes sense. They're thinking 5 or 10 moves ahead. When they need to do something to reach that goal, when they make a promise to you, do they start as soon as they can in order to make sure it gets done? When challenges come up, do they take the easy road and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, it was a problem. I didn't know how to handle it," or do they continue to persevere? So if they made reservations at your favorite restaurant and something happened, they got kicked off the list, there's a misunderstanding, do they immediately try and solve the problem, or do they throw their hands up in the air and quit and say, well, maybe we need to reschedule before even trying to figure out another solution? And do they make excuses for others and hold themselves accountable? What this means, if somebody didn't pull through, if they trusted somebody, if a company should have done something and it didn't happen, are they able to make excuses and be lenient enough for other people, understanding that sometimes there are things outside of people's control? And at the same time, do they hold themselves accountable, understanding I can only control myself, so what could I have done differently? If you haven't seen the movie Battle LA, this is such an important demonstration of that notion, that idea of committing to something even when it is not clear that survival is imminent. And what I mean by that as an extreme example is when a man has a purpose, he has a cause, he has something he believes in. To him, working on it and trying to achieve it is more important than being uncomfortable, than feeling pain, than sacrificing other things that do not compare. And Terrence, I know that you watched this much more recently than I have. So I wanted to give you the space to kind of talk a little bit more about one of the most important scenes in that movie that embodies what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I saw the movie with a bunch of investigators as well as people that served in the military. So they, we all know what it was like in different ways of knowing that of going into an event where you didn't know if you're going to survive. You know, whether it was going into a crime scene and you're looking for somebody and you don't know if the person behind that door is going to shoot you, all the
Hmm.
way to not, going overseas and not knowing who's friend or foe. And I thought Battle of LA is a movie that a lot of people don't talk about, but it's the concept of going up against a formidable adversary and not knowing if you're going to survive, but you're doing this regardless because you know that it's right. And
Hmm.
one of the things that's important, especially like deep down inside every guy, is the understanding that some of us are going to end up giving our lives for our family. Now, we
Hmm.
don't know who's going to have to make that sacrifice. We don't know when it's going to happen, but there is this concept of self-sacrifice that shows up in almost every single movie geared towards males. Is
Hmm.
sometimes the main character survives, sometimes he doesn't. But this understanding of self-sacrifice is so deeply entrenched in masculine culture that we never get enough of it. It's almost like I don't know, it's like an adult nursery rhyme that keeps being told over and over and over again to prepare because eventually you're gonna end up in a situation and maybe you don't have to give up your life, but maybe you have to give up your career. Maybe you have to switch careers because eventually we all are going to be put in a situation in which our character is going to be tried, and people are going to see if you're going to fold.
Hmm.
And that's just kind of my 2 cents on that. It's just movies like this are so important, and especially after watching a movie like this, asking the significant other or the person you saw it with, like, what resonated with you? Do you think the main character made a good decision? How would you have made that decision? And then
Hmm.
we start going into deeper conversations about what truly matters with us. Back to you, Ryan.
Thanks, Terrence. One of the main ways to see that is this man skittish when it comes to responsibility?
Yeah.
Can they face an obstacle or responsibility that's being put on them, or do they find any way to get out of it? Because at the end of the day, Terrence, you brought up some men are going to have to give their lives for their families. When we are committed to something so important as a lifelong marriage or a family, this relationship is more than just, I want to be comfortable. This means that we have decided to commit to somebody, the most dangerous and most important person to us for the rest of our lives. And everything we do, for the most part, is going to now be intertwined. If this person is skittish on responsibility and does not know how to stand up and take responsibility and take action towards moving forward, then what you end up with is a coward who, in the future, instead of doing the things that they need to, they throw it on you. They blame you. Or they say, you know what? It's just easier to go find somebody else because what they're doing is they're chasing their desires. They're not chasing purpose. They're not chasing truth. They're chasing, I want the easiest thing in the easiest way where I don't have to give effort at all. And that person is extremely dangerous. So we need to keep an eye out for it.
Yeah. Just to add to that, you just kind of explained the dichotomy of almost every villain in a movie,
Hmm.
because it's usually an envious, lazy person. So the person wants success, but they don't want to go through the channels of that. And that's something men read very quickly, because there's nothing more dangerous than an enemy that's on your side. You know, a
Hmm.
false friend will do more danger to you any day than an enemy, because you don't look at the false friend. If the false friend pretends like they're your friends, but they're not, but they're slowly waiting for your downfall.
And one more thing, exactly. But Terrence and I, when we're trying to help people, whether it's business partners, friends, clients, one of the first things we notice is this person committed to changing the problem? Do they understand what they've done wrong? Are they willing to talk about it? I mean, if somebody comes to me and says, I've been trying to get married for 5, 10 years and things aren't working out, is the first thing they're going to say, it's everyone else's fault and society's fault and my job's fault and my family's fault? Or are they going to say, I've tried to do a certain number of things. I've tried this, I've tried to mitigate this, I've tried changing as a person. For every obstacle that I could list where I could blame somebody else, did I try to do something myself? And if I point it out, are they able to then move the conversation to, so what should I do? Or what should I pay attention to? Or what have I done wrong? Rather than trying to hear somebody who's going to tell them what they want to hear. And we don't get involved with guys in our friend group and our business group that are skittish from responsibility and don't know how to immediately switch to, well, if you know something better, please teach me because I need to learn and I need to change for the better. If a man isn't doing that, it's a red flag. So this also extends to his circle of friends. And we call them the influencers. This could be friends, family, anybody that influences them, whether they're actually their friend or it's just a YouTube channel that they watch. There are many people that would say that they are influenced by people like Joe Rogan and Patrick Bet-David or the president or a movie. That doesn't mean that they're your friends, but it means that they influence you. So, especially with what they watch, what they listen to, and the people that are directly around them, who influences them? And are those people worthy of being their friend? Are they worthy of accepting them into your life as a positive influence? Or do you see that even the people around him bring him down and bring other people down that are doing useless things or harmful things and are influencing him in that way? If a man does not know how to be a rejecter in the realm of friends and business partners and say this person is bad for me and I am going to get rid of this relationship despite any peer pressure or nostalgia or this fallacy of the sunk cost of just because I've been with somebody or I've had a friend for 10, 15 years and they've changed, but I've spent 10, 15 years, I shouldn't end it now. If they're not able to say no, it is not good for me and not good for the people around me now, then that is a red flag. But if the people that they call their influencers, the people that help them make decisions, where they get their information from, who they spend their time with, you think would even be helpful for your life, that is a very interesting green flag that you should look into. Because those people, believe it or not, whenever you get married, whenever you get into any form of committed relationship, the people that influence him are like invisible people in your own relationship. And unless there's a clear boundary and you understand that he has the character as a rejecter to set up that boundary with the good influencers in his life and then stick to it, you're not talking to one person, you're talking to five or six different people with five or six different opinions that you can't pin down because the person is being influenced by their friends and family in a way that they shouldn't be, and they don't know how to think for themselves. And this is often what happens in arguments and long-term arguments that seem to come out of nowhere and then break up a relationship. Because if you're in the middle of something and you understand, I don't know where this is coming from. I've never heard this person speak like this. And you're having a conversation that doesn't make sense. It's because those ideas aren't their own. They've been fed to them by somebody else. So we really need to make sure, and we've talked about it before about boundaries. Who is this person's circle of influencers and are they good or bad? Because they're going to influence your relationship. So we need to understand, is this person a good rejecter and rejecting those bad people, or do they keep bringing problems into your life in the forms of their own friends? Next slide. I wanted to show a picture of the Hulk here because a man who's always comfortable and always needs to be comfortable is always angry. I couldn't fit the clip in here, but basically there's a clip from one of his movies where uh, Captain America tells him it's a really good time to get angry while Iron Man is chasing this behemoth of a monster towards him. He says, well, that's the secret. I'm always angry. And then he just turns into the Hulk. A man who's always comfortable and always has the need to be comfortable is always angry. And what I mean by that, any single time their plan doesn't go the way they wanted, it's like seeing a little kid with a temper tantrum. The need for control in order for them just to be comfortable and happy is their priority and it takes over. And they're unable to deal with anything that they don't want or don't like. So just the ability to go to a restaurant that wasn't their favorite, the ability to change plans or change schedules, the ability to, hey, if I'm going on a road trip with people and my favorite seat is the front passenger seat and I need to be squished a little bit in the back and be uncomfortable, can I, or do I have to make other people uncomfortable just to make myself uncomfortable? A good man is going to understand when being uncomfortable doesn't really matter, and it's fine. They're okay with it. And a problematic man, somebody who's going to cause a lot of problems, is my comfort, their comfort is more important than the actual relationship, and they will make other people uncomfortable or even put them in a bad position just so that they feel happy. And that's again, they're being skittish from responsibility and skittish from not being able to fulfill the most useless of desires. It's a real problem. But a man who can be uncomfortable understands, Terrence, no, you're good. You should have gone to the next slide. Thanks, man. A man who can be uncomfortable understands that discomfort leads him to strength. Because the more he can deal with tiny bits of discomfort and not losing his temper and saying it's okay, builds an internal willpower to be able to do that self-sacrifice to meet his path and his purpose and his long-term goals. So, to give an example, when I got married, I my personal value was that when my wife and I wanted to get married, she was still going through college. And what I felt was more important was her finishing the education she wanted rather than going, but I would be happier if she lived with me right now. So, what's the trade-off? The trade-off is we might not be able to see each other as much as I want or live with each other the way I want. For how long? A year. But being married to this woman was more important than just putting it off or saying, well, I want her here now. That's what matters most. And then making her sacrifice something that she, in my opinion, didn't need to sacrifice. And that level of discomfort of she's going through her studies, I can't talk to her, I can't distract her as much as I would have liked to on a normal basis. It was uncomfortable, but it built a pattern of loyalty and understanding that even now in our marriage is so helpful because that discomfort helped us both move forward to something better. And it changed our relationship for the better as well. So if a man doesn't want to lift weights, he can't become stronger. If a man doesn't want to be uncomfortable, he won't be able to do difficult things that need to be done. They're difficult because they require being put through an iron. They require being smelted by a blacksmith. They require heat and pressure to remove impurities. They require the ability to be tested day in and day out to figure out where you fail so you can become a better person. And so if a man is okay with a little bit of discomfort and doesn't think that it's that big of a deal, that's a really good green flag. But if every decision they make for the smallest of reasons means they have to be comfortable and make other people uncomfortable, it's a huge red flag. Next slide, Terrence. So to kind of summarize this, because I talked for about 6 or 7 different slides, we can put it in a basic repeatable process. When we're meeting a stranger, we're meeting somebody new. We want to look at, do they listen to understand what is happening? Are they actually paying attention to you in the conversation? And are they only silent unless it's helpful? And if that's working out, we need to understand how they respond to us. So do they reject and ignore useless and harmful things? Are they a rejecter? When they respond to us, are they trying to move something forward in a helpful manner? Is it very clear what their intentions are? And if so, are they bringing problems in? Or are they able to say, no, I don't like this. Things aren't working out. And you can tell it from having a conversation, like we said, about the influencers in their life, about their friends and family. We can talk about it with their failures. Do they have a clear history? If they have failure after failure, that with each failure, they're actually applying something they learned, or are they completely stagnant? Meaning they quit, they don't commit. And what that committing looks like is if they tell you that they're working on something, or if they have an idea, they have a dream, do they have a history of working on the decision ASAP and doing so consistently? This looks like if you're trying to make follow-up plans with this person, let's go on a date, or let's work on something together. Let's go somewhere. Let's go have a picnic at a botanical garden. Do they immediately know how to start working on that? And if they need to reschedule, do they reach out when they realize something is wrong? And are they proactive in figuring it out? Or is it kind of, we're going to leave everything to last minute and I'm not the one to make the decision, you are? Because, if I'm in a relationship with somebody, I want us both to be putting the effort in. Otherwise, what we're going to end up doing is feel like we're babying them and parenting them, and that does not make a good relationship. If all of that makes sense, we're building a basis of their character because character is key. And even if they have that character about how they listen, they respond, they know how to discern and get rid of the bad things in their life, we need to understand, do they get rid of the bad people in their life? So do they only keep good people around him that are actually helpful to him and therefore going to be helpful to you? And if all of that makes sense, what we're building is a picture of this person, right? Who is not going to intentionally bring problems into our life, who has a community of good people around him, right? Who can help influence him for the better and therefore influence you for the better. And that only speaks to be helpful, can keep his opinions to himself, doesn't try and control the situation all the time for his own sake. Then what we want to see, okay, life is going to throw us a ton of challenges. It's going to throw us for a loop all the time. Is this person willing to deal with this discomfort and use it to get stronger? Or are they going to quit as soon as things get tough? And if we can start building out the vision of or not vision, building out a picture of this person from how we're evaluating them in these steps, we're on a very good path to being to put pen to paper and say why it would even be a good idea to continue talking to this person and trying to build a relationship. Or whether from the very beginning, you know what, I'm done. And all of these five things, believe it or not, Terrence and I can find out within a 10 to 20-minute conversation with a man. So this is a process that could take 10 minutes. It could take a couple of months. It depends on how much time you're actually spending with them and whether you're using a repeatable process and asking questions like Terrence included earlier on slide 9 that are deep and meaningful questions. So this is not a process that needs to take multiple years. This is not something that we're talking about is so heavy and burdensome. This is something that we can do on a daily basis, interaction to interaction, that we can figure out within one or even a few interactions with somebody. And if we stick to a repeatable process of evaluating them based on what Terrence and I have talked about, we start to notice that a lot of the people around us don't fit into some basic ideas of true masculinity. And it also helps us understand that if we're attractive, if we get a lot of attention on us, we may realize that 90% of that attention or 80% of that attention, depending on where we go and where we spend our time, isn't worth it. But it also means that it's very easy to see a good opportunity in front of us and take it. So, with that being said, I know Terrence and I have spoken for just about an hour now since we started about 10 minutes late. So, we wanted to just thank everyone for attending. Thank you for dealing with the slight hiccup at the beginning. Thank you for sticking with us for this hour on a Saturday afternoon. And I think we're missing a slide, Terrence. So we just wanted to shout out our pledge supporters. We've had 4 pledge supporters so far on our meetup. I'm not sure if the people who had pledged wanted me to say their last name or not, but we just wanted to say we have Anna, Heather, Kimberly, and another anonymous person who have donated to us so far for our cause. So thank you so much. We appreciate it. And we look forward, both here and on Patreon, to giving you guys more curated content, more helpful content that you'll enjoy. And we hope that it really improves your journey on towards whatever type of relationship you're seeking in the future. With that being said, we do have some news. I'm going to talk about a couple that are on here that are really important to me and that I'm looking forward to. And because I've been talking about for half an hour straight, I'm going to let Terrence close us out with whatever I don't cover on here. So, um, just want to let everyone know this was part 1 of How to Choose a Man. We're going to do part 2 coming up in a week or two, so end of July. And one of the series that we've been doing, the psychopaths, narcissists versus true love or genuine connections. We're going to be doing part 4, so we're going to have new content for that series. About first week of August is our intent, and we do have a lot of people who come to us as well as in the group that want to understand a little bit more about faith-based relationships. So if you're extremely religious or not even extremely religious, you would like to have a relationship based on your religious ideals and your religious understanding of stuff. We wanted to have a little bit of an introduction into there of Holy Love or Hidden Control, a strategic guide to faith-based relationships. Um, Other than that, Terrence, take us away with news of the book and what's coming.
So the book is still scheduled to come out between August and September. We just took some small excerpts from the book and gave the presentation we just gave today. So there's a whole lot more information. Um, the Patreon is live. The Patreon, we have over 200 members. The YouTube is over 260. So if this is your first time seeing our presentations, we have, I think, over 18 other ones on our YouTube channel. Also, our Patreon is a place for people to ask questions, and I put more in-depth information on the presentations in the Patreon. It's also an easy way to kind of know you're dealing with more serious individuals because we haven't had any trolls or anything on Patreon. We're also working on a workbook and a flashcard system. A lot of people ask us about manipulators and red flags. So we're working on like a flashcard deck that shows maybe the 70 to most 80 common ways that manipulators communicate, as well as some green flags that we should always pay attention to. The next presentation we're giving is He Learned the Game Young, how Pokemon hustling and risk shaped modern men. What we're going to talk about is the development specifically of a lot of millennial and Gen Z men and how they were exposed to certain things. Like I know I was exposed to gambling very early. I was exposed to a lot of risk-seeking behavior very early, and I know it shaped me. And a lot of people don't really know that real world. And so we're going to do probably another hour presentation, maybe 30, 45 minutes to an hour presentation just about that world and certain concepts, certain words that you should know. And it would also makes it a lot easier to build rapport with men that grew up in the whole late 80s to 90s. And because I'm going to shed light on a lot of the influences that took place during that. But I appreciate everybody for being here and sticking through it with us. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the recording.